If you're here to discover why Vladimir Putin's biggest mistake, supporting Iran, has officially backfired, then you need to prepare yourself for the cold, hard truth. To see how this alliance turned into a strategic suicide for Moscow, you have to look past the headlines and into the depth of a partnership that was built on mutual desperation and is now ending in total abandonment. In the humid, frantic bunkers beneath Tehran in early March 2026, the air is thick with the scent of ozone and desperation. Above ground, Operation Epic Fury is methodically dismantling 40 years of revolutionary infrastructure. Iranian generals stare at silent, secure lines, waiting for a word from Moscow, a promise of S-400 activations, a squadron of Su-35s, or even a single Russian boot on the ground. But the lines remain cold. The ultimate tragedy for the Islamic Republic is not the American bunker busters or the Israeli cyber strikes. It is the dawning realization that their strategic partner in the Kremlin is preparing to back out. As the smoke clears, the world is witnessing the final act of a scavenger's pact. Russia, having extracted what it needed for its own survival in Ukraine, is quietly stepping into the shadows, leaving Iran to face a reckoning it cannot survive alone. This is the story of how a partnership of mutual desperation became a roadmap for Russian strategic suicide. The seeds of the current conflagration were sown in the muddy trenches of the Donbass in 2022. Following its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia found itself a pariah, its inventory of precision weapons evaporating under the heat of a high-intensity war. Moscow and Tehran, two regimes historically defined by cautious cooperation and historical suspicion, were forced into a marriage of necessity. The power dynamic was clear. Russia needed a cost-effective war machine, and Iran possessed a battle-proven ecosystem of unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, and ballistic missiles. By the summer of 2022, the relationship had pivoted from transactionalism to a sustained partnership. Iran offered the Shahed drones that would eventually terrorize Ukrainian cities, and in return, Russia offered an unprecedented level of military and technical support, including advanced air defense systems, intelligence-gathering capabilities, and the promise of modern fighter jets. This was an ideological alignment between two civilizationist powers seeking to burn down the Western-dominated international order. To the casual observer, the alliance seemed like a simple arms deal. In reality, it was a systemic military-industrial fusion. Deep in the Republic of Tatarstan, within the Alabuga Special Economic Zone, Russia established what was essentially an Iranian drone franchise. Internal documents leaked from 2023 reveal an ambitious timeline to domestically produce 6,000 Shahed 136 drones by August 2025. The price tag was staggering, approximately $193,000 per Shahed for a 6,000-unit buy. The Alabuga facility became a surreal intersection of globalized trade and sanctioned warfare. While the designs were Iranian, over 90% of the computer chips and electrical components, including those used in the Jiran 2 variants, were manufactured in the West, primarily the United States. Only 4 of the 130 electronic components needed to build the drone were made in Russia. To staff this war factory, Russian managers lured Central Asian workers with salaries 10 times the median Russian income, even seizing their passports to prevent them from quitting the high-pressure assembly lines. However, the project was plagued by friction. Approximately 25% of the drones shipped directly from Iran arrived damaged. Communication delays and bureaucratic hurdles between the Russian Ministry of Defense and Iranian technical teams often slowed the production schedule. By 2026, however, Russia had successfully localized the manufacture of the Shahed designs, making continued support for the mullahs a luxury rather than a necessity. Russia was no longer just a buyer. It was the proprietor of the tech, and Iran's strategic value began to plummet. While the Black Sea was a theater of visible naval combat, the Caspian Sea became a sanctions-busting paradise. Clandestine shipping routes between Iranian ports like Bandar Anzali and Russian ports like Astrakhan became the primary arteries of the Axis. Vessels like the Lauga frequently utilized dark port calls, turning off their automatic identification systems, AIS, or emitting decoy signals to mask their movements. In the summer of 2023 alone, over 600 AIS gaps were detected in Russian-flagged ships, a fourfold increase from previous years. These ships moved staggering volumes of munitions, over 300,000 artillery shells and 1 million rounds of ammunition in a single 6-month period to keep Russia's offensive in Ukraine alive. The dark route was more than just a supply line. It was a joint infrastructure project. Iran and China assisted Russia in dredging the Volga-Caspian Seaway Canal to accommodate larger warships and commercial vessels, creating a strategic bypass of Western-controlled maritime routes. This maritime corridor served as a vital lifeline, but it also made Russia's southern infrastructure vulnerable to the spreading fires of the 2026 war. On January 17, 2025, Vladimir Putin and Masoud Pezeshkian stood before cameras to sign the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty. It was touted as a breakthrough, but a closer look at the text revealed a different reality. The treaty did not constitute a mutual defense alliance. Russia, wary of being dragged into a direct war with the United States or Israel, deliberately avoided any clause that would require it to fight for Iran. Instead, the treaty focused on passive security and economic integration. It aimed to create a sanctions-resistant financial architecture. By May 13, 2025, the central banks of Moscow and Tehran had successfully integrated the Russian Mir and Iranian Shatab payment systems in a 3-stage process. Russian tourists in Tehran could pay for goods using contactless NFC technology via the Mir Pay application. By the end of 2024, more than 95% of bilateral trade was conducted in rubles and rials, and Russia's VTB Bank had upgraded its Tehran office to a full branch. Yet, even as the ink dried, the fundamental mistrust between the two nations remained. Russian businesses were hesitant to invest deeply in the volatile Iranian economy, and Tehran felt slighted by Russia's refusal to transfer its most advanced S-400 air defense systems. The strategic calculations of the Axis were shattered on February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, a campaign of unprecedented scale. Within the first 12 hours, nearly 900 strikes targeted Iranian missiles, air defenses, and leadership nodes. The death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in the initial wave triggered a state of strategic vertigo in Tehran. As Iran turned to Moscow for the military aid promised by years of rhetoric, they found only diplomatic signaling. The Kremlin condemned the strikes as unprovoked acts of armed aggression, but strictly maintained its strategic restraint. Russia would provide intelligence, satellite data on American ship positions and aircraft movements, but it would not fire a single missile in Iran's defense. Having secured its own domestic drone production, Moscow now viewed a weakened, desperate Iran as a more useful bargaining chip with the West than a strong ally. By March 2026, Russia began shipping Iranian drones manufactured in Tatarstan back to Tehran, not as an act of solidarity, but as a way to prolong the conflict and keep Western attention distracted from Ukraine. The message was clear. Russia would help Iran fight to the last Iranian, but it would not bleed for them. The support for Iran has not saved Russia's southern flank. It has set it on fire. The backfire is manifesting across 4 critical fronts. First one, the alienation of the Gulf and the Ukrainian wildcard. For a decade, Russia skillfully balanced ties with Iran and the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC. That balance is dead. In the first 48 hours of the 2026 war, Iran targeted all 6 members of the GCC, striking airports in Dubai and hotels in Qatar. The revelation that these attacks were enabled by Russian intelligence has poisoned Moscow's relations with Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman now sees the conflict as a historic opportunity to eliminate the Iranian threat entirely. More embarrassingly for Putin, Ukraine has filled the vacuum, deploying 200 drone-killing specialists to the Gulf to help defend Saudi Arabia and the UAE against the very Iranian technology Russia helped perfect. Ukraine's Sting interceptors, costing only $2,100, are neutralizing $35,000 Iranian drones at a fraction of the cost, making Kyiv the new preferred security partner in the region. Second one, the Caucasus fracture. On Iran's northern border, Russian influence is evaporating. The U.S. brokered Trip Corridor, linking Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan exclave through Armenian territory, is a direct bypass of both Russian and Iranian influence. Russia's muted response to this project has led Tehran to brand Moscow's policy as a betrayal. In Armenia, the lack of Russian support for Tehran has reinforced Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's narrative that alignment with the Kremlin is a security dead end, prompting a shift toward structural cooperation with Turkey and Azerbaijan. Third, economic cannibalization. Economically, the partners are at each other's throats. Both nations are forced to sell their crude oil to the same limited market, China. This has led to a brutal price war. By early 2026, Russian Urals were trading at $12 below Brent, while Iranian light was forced to $11 below. While global prices surged, the discounts cost Moscow billions. China has saved nearly $12 billion from discounted Russian oil over the past 4 years. Meanwhile, Russia's National Wealth Fund, NWF, has shrunk to a precarious $52 billion, or just 1.7% of GDP. Fourth, domestic erosion and the illegitimate leader. Internally, the alliance is fueling a mini-domestic crisis in Russia. The Kremlin's decision to prioritize a Middle Eastern war while cutting domestic budgets for health and education has triggered rare public dissent. In mid-March 2026, a popular pro-Kremlin blogger abruptly turned on the president, calling him illegitimate over the handling of the conflict. Putin's approval ratings dropped to 70%, the lowest level since the invasion of Ukraine. The crackdown on apps like Telegram and WhatsApp has only deepened the public's frustration. Finally, the Russia-Iran axis of 2022-2026 will be remembered as a masterclass in strategic entrapment. Moscow sought a tool to bypass Western pressure. Instead, it found a millstone. By March 2026, with 92% of Iran's large naval vessels sunk and 66% of its missile production sites obliterated, the Axis has been defanged. As the 2026 war continues, the Kremlin's strategic caution looks increasingly like strategic desertion. If the mullahs fall, Russia will find itself geographically encircled and diplomatically isolated, having sacrificed its long-term future for a handful of cheap drones. The architect of this axis, in his attempt to build a new world order, has instead built a graveyard for Russian influence.